Ferg and I know each other since we were about 12 or 13.
Nice.
You know, we met through breakdancing, and we kind of came up through that way. So the three of us would have been obviously very close. And then when we met Dolores, she slotted right in with the three of us. And
nice.
I think the fact that a lot of the time, very early on, it was just the four of us on our own traveling. We had another guy who became our tour manager, and so it was 5 guys, people from Limerick, that we were like this little band or little, gang that traveled around, and we'd meet all these characters on our travels. This sounds like me trying to sell a TV show now, but yeah, I got an idea.
Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
Hey guys.
How are you, man?
Good. I'm good. Thank you. How are you guys doing?
Very good.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah. By the way, is that weird when people comment on your accent?
No, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
So, as you said, to me, there is no accent.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing. It was weird because we traveled, obviously, like for a long time, for 30 years. We all kept our accents. None of us ended up with a kind of weird mid-Atlantic kind of twang. And I find as well, when you spend a lot of time at home, as we have in the past 2 years, it becomes thicker again.
Right.
I mean, it goes back to what it would have been before we even got to travel.
Right.
We don't notice it, but it's when, like, especially we'd have crew with us, and then the four of us would start talking really quickly to each other. And then I go, we don't know what you're saying. We just don't understand a word. You need to slow down, Yeah.
That's great. Do you notice American accents for like can you separate them from each other?
Yeah, pretty much, like New York, Boston, more so.
Yeah.
We'd have spent a lot of time in those places as well. So, and even within New York, kind of Jersey and the kind of more localized ones.
Right.
Mid America, not so much. It's a bit harder to figure out those ones, but obviously you have an American accent, but yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, sorry to break it.
The opposite. Yeah,
get
out of here.
Yeah.
And for Americans, we have a very particular thing. Like I don't even know if we can say it. I don't really care, but I'm not a big fan of some American. I won't say which ones I don't like, but I think we can all figure it out. Anybody that votes Republican. No, I'm just kidding. With that kind of an accent, we all know the accent, but yeah, it's kind of like one of those things that like there's shit that grates on us, and I can't imagine what it's like for people coming into the country, hearing that kind of shit.
I was told as a kid that I should lose in college. One of my professors says you'll be very successful in life, but you have to lose your accent. I'm like, what?
Wow.
Right?
Really?
I don't think I have, but I try. Like I try to push it aside, but it's impossible for me. I don't know why.
Oh, I would never do that.
Yeah, right? I don't think it matters as much as it probably did when we were kids. It was you were kind of pushed into more of a proper speaking type of thing, but the minute you get out of school, you're on the street and you're wrecked, your man over there kind of thing. So, it's like, look, even within Ireland, now Ireland is tiny compared to the States. I mean, there are parts of Ireland where I would have no idea what they're saying because they've such thick accents. To the point I've seen interviews with guys, say, way down west, and they're on like English TV, BBC or something.
Yeah.
Guys speaking in English, but there's subtitles. because their accents. And you are thinking, yeah, that's about right. It's so thick. Even we don't understand it. Yeah.
They have like him closed captioning, a sign language expert,
Yeah.
and somebody drawing literal pictures like Pictionary. Like,
yeah. I think they walk around the village and look for the guy with the thickest accent, go him, interview him. Yeah.
There was a channel that was running a contest for a while. There was a guy from Scotland, and they were like, if anybody can guess correctly what he's saying, and it was a quick clip. It wasn't like it was very long, but they were like, if you can get it, you get like $100 or whatever it was. And for the fucking life of me, I got nothing.
Yeah.
I was like holding it up to my ear, and I was like, maybe there's something wrong with me, but I couldn't get it.
Yeah, no, it's hard. That's another different one as well. Like I've been up there, and that's a thick accent as well.
Yeah.
So that's great. It's what makes us all different.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing, we were talking about it backstage, and I just thought of one. We were talking about like the difficulty and the magic of Zoom and everything. I kind of miss people trying to figure out how to leave an interview or like a Zoom. Remember back in the day, like, great seeing you, love you, I'll catch you later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was at least like 3 minutes of somebody just like press stop. I'm like,
and you start to panic because you're like, where's the button? Yeah, I know.
At that point, you're just like, you just break your screen. You're
just
like,
walk away. Just kind of, just come back a while later looking in.
Yeah. My favorite is the half when they're doing it on a laptop and they have the half closed screen, so it's just literally on their crotch.
Yeah.
Think it's over.
Or it's down here and you kind of can see right up their nostrils. Do not look at this before you came on here.
Yes. Yeah. You can always tell what age somebody was by how much of their forehead you first saw in the beginning. You're like, I
get that with my dad, especially when he was trying to learn how to use FaceTime. It was like all this kind of like, yeah.
Oh my God. And the etiquette too. We had a couple interviews early on. We were doing them where literally one of the guests got up and it was like, hang on, my cat threw up, and like just got up, but was still telling the story he was telling us. Unraveling this thing of paper towels. And was like, anyway, I was on TV in '63, and we were like, do we edit this or do we just leave it in? I don't even know. He's still going. We left it in.
I think there's a book in this when this is all over of like the amount of people who've lost their careers thanks to Zoom mistakes. It's like, there I was, I had a great career, and now it's ruined because something behind me that shouldn't have been or whatever.
Oh my God, I know. It's so fucking terrible. And that's it ties into the thing you were saying before about like what Tom was saying about the accents and stuff, and like what we kind of didn't allow people to do, like what we thought was proper, because I realized, my friends and I were talking about it, every generation kind of goes through it, where like ours was, because Facebook was so new, they figured out a way to make you like worry about your jobs if you had a Facebook. So like there was a point where like everybody was graduating from college, and like all of a sudden all my friends' names would change, and it would be like, because they were trying to hide the fact that they drank on the weekend. And it was like, really? Like, why is that a thing? But it was like, you wouldn't get a job if you had like a red Solo cup. In a picture. And I was like, my God, could you imagine people not getting jobs at Woodstock because they were like boning in the mud? Like, I saw you in the New York Times, and honestly, Susan, we're gonna have to let you go.
I know. It's one of the great things I'm thankful for, is that when I was kind of younger, kind of starting out, that we didn't have all that to worry about. Like if you went out with your friends on a night out, whatever dumb shit you did, it happened and it's forgotten about, and it's gone forever. Whereas now it's it's usually up online forever and haunting you.
Yes, absolutely.
So we were really lucky like that. As great as technology is, there's been kind of downsides to it, things like that.
The weirdest part to me about all that stuff is that it's like, I think the irony of that, all of it's called social media, social networking platform, whatever it is. But every phone now comes with an option to mute it, you know what I mean, or ignore call. I have a friend who, the fucking audacity, man. Like I went to text her the other day and it says, this message has been delivered silently, and I was like, it's noon. Like why? Like, but she just has this thing where she's like, she doesn't want to talk to people, like, or maybe it's just me, I don't know, but like, it's like, I feel like, what if there's an emergency? How do you not have your ability to be contacted? freaks me out.
Yeah, I know. I see it. Like I got 4 kids, and 2 of them are in their early 20s now. So they're of that generation where, you know, it's that kind of world they live in. And I don't think I've ever seen them speak on a phone. I mean, it's all fingers and, you know, texting and all that. And even when they were teenagers and phones first came along for them, they'd be texting people and like sitting on the other chair on the other side of the room. You know, I'd realize it's really quiet in here. And then I'd look, and they'd all be over there kind of like this, gone. And I'm thinking, they're talking about me.
That's what I was about to say.
It's like, why else would you do that? It's like, if you have any bit of paranoia in you at all, it's just magnified when this happens. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so true.
You know, it's like if somebody came in, if 2 people spoke French in front of you and you think they're talking about me kind of thing. And, it's that version of it in tech, you know, so.
Yeah.
I've been in situations where I was specifically doing that, talking about somebody in the room, but like accidentally one of my friends would have their phone actually on, so I'd be like, and you just hear, bing, and you know,
oh god,
and you're like, and I just want to be like, are you dumb?
Yeah,
Now he knows.
Yeah, put it on silent. Yeah,
I know,
like a normal person. Yeah.
Yeah, psycho.
Yeah. Even though it's obvious to everybody in the room, it's still, you can't accuse anybody of doing it unless you hear the sound.
Yeah. You know, and then you're like, you throw your phone away because you kind of go, it wasn't me. I know.
You owe me a new phone. I had to break it.
Yeah.
Toss it out the window. Oh my God. I know it is weird. It's, but like you said, like some of it, I don't know, like, I guess for entertainers, it's beneficial. I mean, but also I feel like everybody's kind of an entertainer now. Like it doesn't matter. Like there's more, I don't know if there's more competition or just more noise. You know what I mean? Like, because obviously not everybody's talented, but at the same time, it's like, who the hell can decipher what, you know, like if you go viral, you get your own TV show regardless. So it doesn't, you know, it's a really weird time.
It is weird. I mean, I think we're all aware that there's a big thing now, and it's around for it's not a new thing. It's people are just want to be famous. They don't want to really work to do it. And you kind of go, what are they famous for?
Yeah.
It's like they're famous for being famous.
You could say Kim Kardashian. It's fine.
You know, so,
Kanye's busy. Kanye's busy harassing Pete Davidson. No one's going to come after us.
You know, but it's just crazy. I mean, I get the fame thing is kind of something they kind of ape after. And then they get there and they complain about, oh, no one ever leaves me alone because, you know, and you're kind of going, well, you wanted this. But I believe, you know, if you kind of work hard enough at anything and you get something from it, well, fair enough. But just kind of going viral for something dumb and then that's it. We're all stuck with you for, you know, the next 10 years is a bit of a bizarre way of working things.
Yeah.
I go to the gym here just a couple of times and everyone's inside there like filming themselves in the mirror and kind of doing, you know, and you're thinking, is anyone actually doing anything in here other than just shaping up in front of things? It's just really weird. That's when I start to feel my age, is when I look around and go, you're the old guy in here, just be quiet.
Oh, I know.
What's amazing to me is that everybody's filming themselves in front of the mirror. Meanwhile, you've achieved such a level of fame yourself that like it's the reverse. You're like, I just want to do my workout. I'm just trying to come in here, do my workout. And
all I think is I better not be in that. I'm just kind of, you know, I'm going down here far away from it. Yeah.
You should hand out release forms whenever anybody's filming. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I actually am famous, so I need you to
I'll start wearing a Zorro mask or something, wandering around and draw absolutely no attention to myself. Yeah.
And then you would go viral for being the guy who wore a Zorro mask to the gym.
Kiss. Yeah.
It's so weird. Even my friends do the same thing where they'll be like, hey, did you watch my Snapchat story? And I'd be like, well, we're out to lunch, so I saw you film it. I know what you ate. I don't need to see it. And they'll be like insulted, like, but you didn't look at it. I put a music video behind it. Like, all right, let me check it out. I know.
I get that. People are like, I tagged you in something, and I was like, did you? And it's like, yeah, they're amazed you didn't watch it, and you're like, gone, kind of, I have a life. You know, I just have things I need to do.
Yeah.
So. Like those things, like, look, they're great in one way. All that stuff does help. And then even to be able to do stuff like this, thanks to that, you know. But there's a massive downside to it. But I think, look, I you just have to be realistic about it and use it at the right time for the right things, and
Sure.
still have a life outside
Yeah.
of it. I think that's when it gets dangerous, is when you kind of lose track of reality. Because a lot of what we see on Instagram and those things, we all know is fiction anyway.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the you know, the magazine covers and stuff like that personified, like to a larger extent, because we all like. I always find it weird when people start to rage against, like, you know, any of those fashion magazines where they're like, oh my God, so and so has a doctored image, and I wanted to be like, that's their whole job. Like, there's a whole industry based around learning how to do that. So why is anybody shocked? But it's the same thing with Instagram and stuff, where it's like, yeah, I assume everybody has a filter on. Like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, before it became I remember when it came out first, and I got it. I thought it was just a really cool kind of way to make your crappy photos look good. You know, but there's a feel that now it looks really cool because I put this filter on, you know, but it kind of morphed into this whole other thing, and that it became now. And I think the reality of it is not there at all. Most of what I see anyway on there is just, you can tell it's like, people don't even look human half the time. It's like they're so, their features are gone. Nobody wants to look like a normal person anymore.
Right.
I mean, if I walked down the street and somebody passed me and looked like that, well, oh my God. You know, it's like some kind of horror show.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to age.
No.
I think it's leaking into society too, because me and my wife were talking about this the other day. People are now being built instead of just being themselves. So they're changing their lips to have this lip, this eye to have this eye, and you're getting a bunch of clones all over the place, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, look, that's always been there, I think, but it just wasn't kind of in your face all the time. Whereas now, and look, I'm as bad as anyone else. I'll go on to Instagram and I'll be looking through it, and, you know, I'm guilty of that. But it's there all the time. Whereas before, you turn on some freaky TV show where, you know, people had plastic surgery to the extreme, and you go, oh my God, look at this. This is crazy.
Right.
But now you don't have to have the money for plastic surgery. You can just, you know, fancy it up on an app.
And as long as you don't actually go outside and let people see you.
That's the other thing.
Like, do you want to hang out? It's like, honestly, you wouldn't recognize me. If you've been liking all my Instagram photos, I don't think it's a good idea.
I'm 65 years old, really. And, you know.
It's so bizarre. And when it actually winds up becoming a thing where, like, it's way too accessible. Like, I mean, you know, I have a love-hate relationship with science, because I feel like I really like all the crazy shit that's going on sometimes, and I get really excited about it as like a bit of a nerd. But at the same time, like, I feel like when you're able to genetically modify, like, your children in advance, that's gonna be gonna be a little weird.
They've already gotten to the point where you can clone your dead dog. That's crazy to me. Where I can make another one of the dog I loved. I'm like,
and dogs already kind of look the same. It's not, you're like, this one was really good at math though, so I'm gonna bring him back.
How bored was that scientist that he thought, wow, I'm going to clone my dog here? Sorry, my server, come on. I mean, we've got nothing to do today, guys. What are we going to do? Let's clone, you know, the cat. It's so weird, but I mean, it's like, I have a 9-year-old, my youngest, and I say to him, I goes, what kind of world, like, if he lives to be 80 or 90, what way is the world going to be? Because it's changed so much in one generation. From, you know, me, like, the difference between my parents' generation and myself was huge, and then the jump, especially due to technology, between me and my kids now is massive. So another 50 years down the road, it's going to be unrecognizable, I think.
I think so too. You know? And it's weird too, because did you ever try to think back at when you were amazed by a piece of technology? Like, I was trying to think, like, I had a cassette player when I was younger, but I pretty much remember having like a Walkman and stuff like that. And I remember how cool it was to have a CD player. Like, that's something that I don't think I'll ever forget. But I don't remember being that amazed by an iPhone. I don't know why.
No,
and I don't know where the gap. I don't know where the gap is, or the desensitization of it is.
No, you're right. I mean, I remember, like, the first VCR player I saw. I was like, wow, we can record stuff on TV that we're not watching.
Right.
This is, this was amazing. And then like Atari and all those kind of things that were just, I mean, they're real simple tech when we look back now, but we were in awe of that. And now, I mean, our phones have more tech in them apparently than the first, ship that went to the moon.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, here's a new phone. And whatever. It's kind of, we don't.
Exactly.
And, it's got a bigger camera. That's kind of, we all get excited about that. So it's kind of, we become desensitized to that kind of thing. But,
I want to know what the next thing is. I'm hoping it'd be cool if we all lived long enough to see the next thing that would blow us away.
Yeah.
But I don't even know what the hell it would be at this point. I mean, one of our guys is trying to get to Mars and we're like, okay, buddy, you know what I mean? Like we should be really excited about it, but we're like, have you seen the new reality TV show? Or
I was going to say, riddle me this. So Noel, if they said to you, we want you to be the first band that plays on Mars, would you take the trip? Would you go and do it?
I doubt it. That sounds like an awful lot of work. It just like, doesn't it? And I mean, I'd be more worried about how do we get? Are we coming back? This is my biggest question. You see, because I think like all these Mars trips are one way, from what I know at the moment. The people that they're talking to, it's like go there, but you ain't coming back. So, I mean, look, it's amazing, and it is, and I love science fiction, so. To see all that stuff kind of creeping in kind of stuff that we used to see on TV as fiction is now, a lot of it is reality. It is amazing. But I mean, I think in another 2 generations, it'll be just, if we were to be able to come back or live that long or whatever, it'd be just unreal to see what way things would be by then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is basically Jetsons technology. Like the fact that this is going on, I try to think about that every now and again, and then I'm like, where's my flying car? You know what I mean? I get greedy.
That was the ultimate. I mean, in the 80s, this was it. We were definitely going to have flying cars by now. I mean, everybody was fully convinced of that. When you look back now, you think, what were we thinking? But I mean, that was the kind of the pinnacle of it. Like, we can all give up after that. But then you see self-drive cars and how much they crash. You think, maybe we'll hold off on the flying cars for a while. Let's get the ones on the ground to work okay first.
Have you seen the ones on the guys on YouTube though who have those parasailing kind of fans? Like
it's like a giant drone.
Oh really? My God, it is so cool, and I don't know how they do it, but I want it in the worst way. I just know. Okay. But you're right. If we all had them, disaster.
And especially then. You'll you'll have the whole drink flying problem.
Yes.
It won't be just drunk driving. It'll be like, it'll be guys coming home like half cut. Just like, oh God.
Instead of the car in the driveway being kind of crooked, it will be them tangled up.
Just coming straight down like into the back door.
You're just in your kid's bedroom, like in the window, like
you wake up in the morning and kind of across the back window.
Hey honey, time to get up for school. You're in the tree.
I
was going to ask you about because when you started doing music and stuff like that and you're out in the UK, I feel like a lot of the guests that we have on that are overseas basically before they get to America, they're not really appreciated in their own country. And then for what does that annoy you? Did that annoy you guys back in the day when Linger like kind of blew up here and then you got to go back as the stars that you were you all like, you're all phonies, like
and that still rubs us up the wrong way. Really? We love to tell that story here because I mean, look, we come from like where I live and where I'm at now. We've always lived here. Is a place called Limerick, which is not even Dublin is obviously the capital, and then particularly we're looking at kind of 89, 90. We started out, and if at that time it has gotten better, but if you weren't from Dublin, you just didn't want to know about you. Right. And all the bands that would kind of tour Ireland were just all basically Dublin bands that were really well known here. They weren't really well known, bar U2. They wouldn't have been known outside of here, And So you'd be the opening act to them, and then you'd go to Dublin and you'd try and play a couple of shows, and they just didn't want to know about it. And now I don't want to there were a couple of DJs that were good to us back then, but they were like on at 4:00 in the morning and kind of had 20 listeners kind of thing, but yeah, then we went off. Like that first album came out and it died a death. It didn't. I think it barely scraped into the top 200 in the UK. Wow. And honestly, we had done pretty okay, not in Ireland, but in the UK before the album. We used to tour a lot, and we'd get like theater-sized places, and we'd sell them out. But when the album came out, it was, for whatever reason, I think everyone just had enough of us and just kind of, in Ireland, you wouldn't know we even existed. But in England, the live thing was doing well for us. But once the album came out, it just didn't click. And then like that, we went off to the US, and we were on tour in Europe, and we got a call that Linger, I think, had gone in at number 8 in the Billboard charts, thanks to college radio had picked up on it.
Nice.
And so we were completely oblivious. What's college radio? We didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. And we were the opening act for another Irish band that were touring across Germany and Spain. We came off that tour. We flew straight to Denver. And the first time we went out, we were the opening act for another English band. And the place just went mental. Just absolutely, they knew all the lyrics to all the songs. Like, we'd been playing to empty rooms for a long time before this. And basically overnight for us, everything changed. And we ended up staying there for, I guess, about 6 months that time, 6 or 7 months. Wow. And we came back, and in that time, the album, Linger took off. The album was massive. And so we flew home and back. There's an airport near where we live that there's a direct flight from New York. Got off the plane, just thinking we're back, back to normality. And the airport was just rammed with like TV crews and press. And we were like, what the hell is going on here? The word had gone back, because this is before, we all still lived at home with our parents. So you kind of ring when you could afford. We were broke. I mean, we hadn't a penny. Wow. Because even though you're doing well, your album is selling, you're not going to get paid for another year, So we're just making ends meet, kind of just feeding ourselves. So you wouldn't ring too often. But when you did, you'd be telling your parents, and they'd say, yeah, we heard something about it here. So we had no idea it had kind of taken off here. And yeah, that was just insane. We got off the plane and it was just rammed. It was kind of Beatlemania stuff, which, and then of course, you're jet lagged and you're kind of, oh God, what's this all about? And those first few weeks when we came home were really weird, because we had grown up here and you're walking around the place that kind of anonymous. Suddenly everyone knows, oh, you're in that band. And you kind of had hoped you could come home and not have, you could just kind of slip back into kind of go out with your friends and do all that kind of stuff again. Yeah. So it was a bit weird. But then, as time went on, and suddenly, the album did well here in the UK and further afield. But you do start to get a bit resentful that how come it took us to go all the way across the Atlantic to be appreciated. And you start to realize, and then you'd be doing interviews and go, oh yeah, we always knew you'd do well. And you're thinking, you never even heard of us like a month ago.
Right.
Kind of thing. So there's a lot of that. And then you'd always meet these DJs. Oh, I was the first to play you. And you're thinking, that's more bullshit right there.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I mean, we used to take every opportunity to kind of say that up to the very end.
That's so great.
Just say like, yeah, sure you do. And I mean, up until the very end, it still wasn't our biggest market, Ireland. We did okay here, but compared to other countries, I'll tell you one good one. A few years ago, around 2013, and I just come back from a tour. I think we were in Asia, and it was a big tour. And I went into a store, and a guy says, yeah, you're in the band. Because, what are you doing with yourselves now? And I'm thinking, I just got back from a tour. I mean, we were still going, everything, so you wouldn't, there was that initial kind of thing of like the band are huge. and then everyone gets used to seeing you, and it kind of dies down again. And everyone knows, oh, the Cranberries did well, and but it settled back into itself again then. Nice. But it definitely it was a bit of a kick that you don't get appreciated in your own country, and then we started to meet other bands from other countries, and it seems to be a kind of a thing where you're kind of touring, you're playing to one man and his dog for years, and then you go off somewhere else and suddenly you're massive in whatever other country it might be.
I don't know what that is, because you're right. Like pretty much every, even comedians too, but every musical guest we've had on said the same thing. Wherever they're genuinely located, be it a country or even like a small town area, they were not embraced by that area until they had to go out and then come back. And then it's almost begrudging. You're like, it's begrudgingly.
Yeah,
it's a weird feeling.
It is. I mean, there was someone told me years ago about a saying that Bono said, and he was talking about Ireland specifically, because he said in other countries, say like in the States, somebody goes, oh, there's a guy living up there in a big house and he's done well for himself. And a guy's walking by down and he goes, someday that's going to be me. I'm going to be that guy. But he goes, in Ireland, guy walking by looks up to his big house and he goes, someday I'm going to get that guy. And I thought, if it is true, if he did say that, it's brilliant. I mean, it's just, it sums it up. Yeah. So,
oh my God, that's so true. Yeah, it is really weird. I don't know why. Like, I grew up in New Jersey and stuff like that, and even when I was, first starting out, it's so weird that they don't embrace their artists that well. Like, you literally have to fucking leave and then come back, and then and you're right, and it's totally fake, because they're like, oh, we remember it. I'm like, no, you don't remember shit. Like, it's like when I left and moved to LA and then came back, things changed, like, fairly well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just this whole thing, but it was so, like, you had this thing where you're like, you're so full of shit and you want to say it, but you're also like, I don't want to start that fight. But
no, pick your battles, I think, but there is. And the thing is, you will remember, I think, the people that did support you early on.
Oh, absolutely.
And if they look for things like interviews or stuff like that, then later on, you'll always go, I'll make the time there. They were always good. So I think, look, it's the same everywhere. It looks like, it seems to be. It's just, it's just, we all have our version of it.
What's crazy is, like, and like, I think we were talking about it backstage a little bit about the pandemic being some kind of like an equalizer almost to an extent. But what's really funny is, like, I would do these comedy clubs when I was younger, and the club owners were always, the typical business owner type of guy, but they'd be like, Kevin James used to come here, and Rob Williams, and now they don't talk to us anymore. And then as you got into the business, you'd be like, because you're dicks. Like, you're like, how is that not obvious? And then, like, but then, like, the pandemic came around, and they didn't make, they couldn't survive without the performer. So you were kind of like, oh, see, without us, but it's so weird, because it's not hard to be nice when you're being treated, decently and fairly or whatever. You do remember those people. And
that's it. I mean, like, most people, I'd like to think, are good and just want to get on with it. And especially, we would have met hundreds of different kind of, radio pluggers or press people and that. And like, they're just trying to do their job like we're trying to do ours. So as long as, we're just getting along. I mean, look, there are dicks, as you said, out there. And it's just, that's unfortunate. No matter what walk of life we're in, you're going to meet that.
Totally.
But usually, most people are just nice and just want to kind of get on with it.
Did it help having you guys were pretty unified for most of the time? I mean, was that something you guys had to have a conversation about beforehand, where, like, okay, look, we're in this together no matter what, like, stick it through? Or was it natural?
It was very natural, because Mike, the bass player, was my brother, so there's that connection. And then Farg, the drummer, Farg and I know each other since we were about 12 or 13.
Nice.
We met through breakdancing, and we kind of came up through that way. So the three of us would have been obviously very close. And then when we met Laura, she slotted right in with the three of us. And
nice.
I think the fact that a lot of the time, very early on, it was just the four of us on our own traveling. We had another guy who became our tour manager, and so it was 5 guys, people from Limerick, that we were like this little band or little, gang that traveled around, and we'd meet all these characters on our travels. This sounds like me trying to sell a TV show now, but yeah, I got an idea. But yeah, I mean, you'd go to one town and you'd meet this bunch of people, and then back in the van and off somewhere else. So it wasn't a conscious thing. It just became the way that it was us together all the time.
Right.
And look, the more success you have, the bigger you need to become with the size of a show and the amount of people you have. But at the core of it, it still remained us. I mean, any troubles we ever did have between us were usually from an outside force that was trying to get involved and go, you should do this and he should do that kind of thing.
Right.
And like any band, you'd have your moments, but thankfully we were good enough to realize these things, and we'd always just sit down and kind of trash it out. But I mean, it's like, I have great memories of those early days more than anything, because it wasn't as much of the business side of it. It was like we wrote a bunch of songs and we scraped together some gear and just went off and played clubs. And there's not that many people to interfere with that setup.
Sure.
It's simple and it works. And then we used to meet a lot of people our own age. Like, we were all about 19-ish at the time, and so we'd go playing, like we used to do, especially in the States, we'd play as the opening act for whatever band that would take us. And then on the nights where those gigs were off, we'd play our own club shows, smaller shows. Nice. And then we'd meet people that were our own age, and we'd kind of hang around with them for the night in all these places across the States that we'd only ever seen on TV. Because we grew up, in a small town in Ireland, and you thought, wow, look at that. Like, America to us, when we were in the 80s, was like the future. It was like, this was so far ahead. And then we were in the middle of all of that. And we had it up, and it was great. I have amazing memories of those first, especially kind of, I guess, the first 2 or 3 years where it was all like that. Right. In a van, just going around. And as I said, success is great, but it does bring with it its own issues, and kind of things become bigger, and it becomes more businessy.
Sure.
And less about that kind of little group of people.
Yeah, there's too many moving parts.
There is.
Yeah.
And you can feel, and I think we did feel at times, that it's not even your thing anymore. It's like suddenly managers are controlling it, or the record company, and you're like, oh, I want to take time off. Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't. You got to do this and that, this type of stuff. And when you're that young, you kind of feel like these are all like a lot older than you. Yeah. And it's like that kind of, like your dad saying to you, no, that's not right. And so you kind of go, yeah, okay, we'll keep going then, whether you want to or not. But look, it's all a learning curve. There is no kind of college or school that you can go to teach you this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I also don't want to glance over you were a break dancer. I need to know more about this.
Yeah. Thought I got away.
You were going to get out of it.
There. Yeah, that was close. Yeah. The short version is, I don't know if you remember, Breakdance the movie was a big deal here. And everybody I knew, like, overnight, we all becoming like crazy on breakdance. And Ferg, the drummer, lived kind of outside of Limerick a little bit. So he was in a breakdancing crew that lived out there. And if he was to come into the city, where I lived was the first place he'd hit. So they'd come by us and kind of do this these breakdancing challenges. But Ferg and I hit it off, just even though we were on an opposite crews. We just seemed to click. And like the breakdancing thing kind of faded away. But we remained friends and kind of got more into music and different bands. The bands we were into were the same. And that kind of grew into we had all the gear, the breakdancing gear, and we used to have, the cardboard and everything. But as the year went on, there was an intense year of breakdancing. And then it was like, we'd put all the gear out and just lie there in the sun all day talking. just a whole bunch of us, nobody doing any breakdance.
No more windmills.
Yeah. It was like, still had the music on and all that, but it was just like talking about breakdancing. And then, I mean, that kind of faded out, and we got into like bands like The Cure and The Smiths and things like that.
Oh,
And
nice.
when that kind of drove us to eventually become the Cranberries, then that love of that kind of music, you know.
Yeah.
A weird beginning, I will admit. It's like that the Cranberries came from breakdancing background. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, did you guys ever catch each other's eye on stage during a concert and like, do you want to do it?
Oh God, no, thank God. I mean, God above,
that would
can
have
you
been great.
imagine? That would just definitely not as the years went by. Anyway, to be like ambulance involved and things like that. I'm sure it'd be stretchers and that kind of stuff. But I mean, it was great. It, as I said, for us, it's funny. Years would go by, like, and we'd hear like a song that we would have breakdanced to. We'd be on the bus or whatever and go, "Remember this?" And we'd be kind of all getting excited. And then people who knew, it was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like kind of thing. Who didn't know anything about this side of our lives.
Oh, that's
hilarious.
hilarious.
Yeah. But again, great memories of it, you know.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have got to meet Ferg if it wasn't for that, I think, you know. So, and that was kind of the nucleus of it. It was kind of Ferg, myself, and Mike were, you know, we began this thing because we hadn't a note in our heads. Just figured we didn't realize it, but it was kind of like that punk mentality of just buy instruments and see what happens. But we'll pick it up, and that's really how it began. And thankfully, because I think not knowing what you were doing kind of shaped the sound of what we became then.
Yeah. Do you remember buying your first instrument?
My parents, well, the truth is, Ferg got a drum kit because he was in, some guys from school with him were in a band together, but he didn't like it, so he left after a couple of weeks. And my brother Mike got a bass for his birthday then. So Mike and Ferg played together.
Wow.
I had no interest in being in a band, but I loved music, and I thought I'd just hang around with him. And that was kind of it. And my parents were the ones who bought me the guitar because all I did was hang around doing nothing. Like, just kind of, there's no hope for this one. So they bought me a guitar because it was the only instrument that, like, it was like you had bass and drums. It was like, what's missing? So the guitar was actually there when I came home from school one day. Wow. And that was it. And it just, so suddenly I'm there with the two boys, and we are just dreadful. I mean, sure, we haven't a clue. I remember the first song we ever tried to play was a song by Talking Heads called Psycho Killer.
Oh, yes.
Which is a great song. But we thought, that sounds easy. Let's give that a go.
It's honestly, even hard to play on Rock Band, man.
Yeah. It was like, we had no idea. And then Mike and I used to fight that, does the bass and the guitar, do they play the same thing? Like, if it's an A on bass, should it be an A on guitar, or will that clash? I mean, it was all this kind of ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, look, obviously we learned as we went along, and it just, and the reason we kind of actually started writing our own songs is because we were so shit at every other song. If you make up your own, it just, nobody can say it's rubbish because, you know, no one's heard it before. Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. That's great. So your parents were, when they got you the guitar, did they think this will just be a hobby? It'll give them something to do. And then when you were like, I'm going to do this forever, were they like, what have we done?
Yeah. You see, they gave us the stuff, and in fairness, my dad used to drive us around. You know, we got a few gigs. Before Dolores joined the band, we had a guy who was kind of well known locally. There was a local band that were pretty well known, and he was the drummer in that band, but he wanted to be a singer. And he, we were still awful, even with Noel. But Noel, even, he knows all this, because he did show us a lot about how you write, you are meant to play the same thing, and, you know, this is this and that, and kind of the basics of a band. And so we did a few gigs with Noel, and they were all local, and my dad used to kind of load everything in the back of his car and drive us there.
Wow.
And fair, like they were really good like that. They were very supportive of us, and I don't think they ever thought it was going to be, going to do this for the rest of our lives. Like it's like if my own kids started skateboarding tomorrow, I go, yeah, that's great, and you kind of drive them to the skateboard park and things like that. It's just it was a bit like that, and then I guess it wasn't until Noel left and we met at Oris, and then we were still doing a few local gigs, but we actually we did a demo. I sent it to the UK to Rough Trade. I was a massive Smiths fan, and I knew the Smiths were signed to Rough Trade.
Right.
So when we did the demo, everyone said you should send that off, and I was like, "There's only one place I'm sending it." That was to Rough Trade. Worst manager ever. Like, I mean, so send it there. But believe it or not, we got a letter back, which it was a 3-track demo, and got a letter, came back to my parents' house, and I think my parents were more shocked than we were even that, somebody actually replied to them.
Yeah.
The problem was they wanted us, like, it was like the letter was basically, we like the sound, but if you can come to London, we'll come and see. But again, it was the 80s. Financially, that wasn't really doable, But it did give us a bit of confidence that maybe we are doing something that, people outside of our friends are going to go, yeah. Your friends go, yeah, guys, can I get in free to the gig kind of thing. But I mean, that's it.
People don't realize when you're a performer, when you're performing, you could live on a letter like that. Like in your mind and your ego and your confidence for, a while.
Big time. My brother was an apprentice plumber at the time. He'd left school and he was only a couple of months into it. Yeah. And I knew he was working in this place in town. So I cycled in and I kind of caught his eye and he came out and he was like, I'm quitting the job. And and I was like, no, it doesn't really mean, it's a great start, but I wouldn't be kind of walking out of your job straight away.
You're like, what have I done?
Yeah. How many guys have done that? Gone in and told their boss, yeah, screw you, I'm out of here. And then back a month later. But, my parents then were good in that we eventually looked at it kind of, that letter led to another letter and so on and so on. It gave us the confidence to kind of send on the stuff more and more. And then they started flying us to London. The record companies would go, we'll pay for you to come over. Wow. And it was a bit of a kind of a lot of it was one record company got wind that this record company were interested and, we can't let them get them before us. So they'd fly here or we'd be flying over there. And I think that's when our parents all went, yeah, look, actually this might actually be something.
Yeah.
And that went on for over a year. But sure, my brother was only 16 at the time. So, I mean, we were kids and, but we thought it was great. I mean, we're kind of, kind of being flown to London and put up in, they were shitty hotels, but for us, it was, didn't matter.
No, it does not matter.
We're living the dream. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going through some old photos and I have, I was like, what the fuck are these? And I'm looking and I realized I took photos of my first hotel room as a stand-up on the road, but it looks like pure garbage, but I'm just like, what is this? And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. I remember this now.
That's it. I mean, you grew up looking at other guys doing this and suddenly you're doing it. So it doesn't matter if it's, if it's a hellhole, it's still, you're doing the thing that, you kind of, a lot of bands dream of doing.
Yeah.
And look, eventually, obviously we got signed and it was, we didn't realize that's when the hard work starts, but it was great. I mean, such a great adventure. And it was just, really was just the four of us through all of that, because we had a local guy that was kind of helping us a bit, but I mean, we didn't have a manager as such and that kind of thing, But yeah, it was brilliant. Like I wouldn't want my own kids to do it, but I mean, it's just, yeah.
Would you be okay if one of them said they wanted to, though?
Yeah, like we've been pretty liberal with them. We've kind of said, look, whatever road you want to go down, we'd support you with, because particularly my parents were great. I mean, they didn't, and I have to say, like, I've often thought of it. I've got my two oldest kids are daughters, and I wonder, Dolores didn't know us that long, right, in the big picture of things. And after maybe a year, she went home to her mum and said, I'm going off in the back of a van with 4 guys across the UK for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, and I think if it was me, I'd be like, what? Absolutely not. You know, I mean, there was a lot of trust there to, go for it, you know. But Dolores had been, she'd been singing since she was 4.
Right.
Like, and like she sang in the choir, and you know, she played piano since she was 4. So the music thing really was her. That's all from a very, very young age. There was no other option for her. That's what she wanted to do.
Wow.
So, you know, I think her mom realized that when she came in and said, this is part of that journey that I'm going to be on, that she just went, yeah, sure, go for it.
Right.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah, that does make more sense.
Yeah, it does. Whereas the 3 of us, it kind of came later. It wasn't an ambition kind of, you know, from a very early age. It's just something that happened through our teens that we ended up coming into it. So, but look, I mean, the thing I've often, like the question you asked me there, if my kids ask me about if they come in and say they wanted to do it, I often think of, look, I to this day know 100 guys that live here in this town that were in bands like we were. And it was great. There was one studio in town, had a load of rehearsal rooms, and all the bands, we were all the same age, we all hung around together there.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, you know, bar us, you know, they didn't go to college. They kind of kept kind of trying to live the dream, and eventually realized it's not going to happen. And it gets a bit late in the day then to kind of go, shit, what do I do with my life now? You know, a bit. And I get it on both sides. I get that, you know, you still think it might just happen because there is no limit to it. But at the same time, it's nice to have a plan B, I think. You know, and times have changed a lot. I mean, this is the very early 90s where, to be honest with you, here, particularly where we grew up at that time, it's changed an awful lot. But there weren't a lot of options, jobs and things like that. It was very limited. A lot of people moved off when they got to a certain age.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for us, it was kind of just give it 110% and see. And we were super young. I mean, even if it had gone wrong early on, we'd still be only 20.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, there was time to go and, you know, get that job in the bank or whatever it might be, you know.
I worked in a bank too. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's crazy is like when you're, it's hard to explain a gap, like a sizable gap when you've been performing for a long time in your resume. Like I remember when I moved out to LA, I was like, I should, for the first time in like years, I was like, oh, you know what, I'm going to get a job, just a backup thing. Cause I'd gone out, I'd had a lot of network meetings, and that's where it started. I was like, oh, I'll go for those meetings. And I'm like, I'll just move there. I haven't moved. I want to move. Like I've been doing stand up on the East Coast for a while. I'll go to LA and do it. And then I did it, but I was like, I should try to get a job. And then I realized as I was applying, they were like, where have you been? And I was like, well, you see, I had a dream.
Yeah. And, you should have just said prison, you know, or something. Just like,
it probably would have been way better than being like, I'm a comedian. They would have been like, sure you are. Prison probably would have worked out a little bit better if I had said that.
No, I know, because I think, look, no matter what walk of life, because I've had over the years, like I've always loved doing this, but there are moments you think, I just can't be arsed with this anymore. And then you think, okay, what will I do then? You know, and I'd say this is in my mid-30s now at that point. And you kind of go, what do you kind of, it's a long time to kind of, you know, suddenly change.
Suddenly be like, I'm going to be a fresh order cook.
People do it, you know, but it just, it seems again like a lot of hard work to suddenly change. It's just kind of, just stick to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, you're jumping on your bike and you're going over and you're like, do you still need an apprentice from when my brother left?
So remember, my brother used to work here. His job's still going. Yeah. You know?
Oh, God. Do you remember feeling particular, like, because you said your parents thought you were kind of directionless, so they got you the guitar because you weren't doing anything. Did you feel that way, or did you have a hidden passion in your mind, like, I'm going to do this thing?
No, I was a bit. I had an ambition to work in a record store, and as weird as that sounds, I even did an interview for the job. You know, but thankfully we saw the way record stores went, and it was not going to be a job for life. So Yeah, no, I left school and I had a couple of jobs, bits and pieces, but nothing kind of interested me. You know, I
Yeah.
was just a typical teenager, or kind of, you know, even though late teenager, it was kind of, I just didn't really know what it was. And then, you know, I often wonder what would have, if this hadn't happened. People go, you know, what would you become? And I have genuinely no idea. And I've been very lucky in that sense that I, you know, I kind of fell into something that I had zero interest in.
Wow.
But then once I did, you know, I kind of came up with a few songs and went, it's actually all right. You know, it's kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
How did you discover
know?
your own writing process? Did it take a little time, or did you find like a natural? Because I know some people write because they hear a tune in their head, or musically they hear it, but some people do it lyrically. How did you come about yours having no prior interest in doing it beforehand?
It was just like that. Like it was out of necessity originally. That kind of like I said to you earlier, where we were just terrible musicians and couldn't do cover versions. And then, you know, you learn a few chords and you go, okay, I know 4 chords. What can I do with them?
Yeah.
And that's how it started. And then I'd come in to the 2 boys and go, I have an idea for something. And, you know, here it is. And it would be that 4 chords mixed up around in different ways. And then, you know, you learn more. And we became tighter as a unit. For a long time before we met Dolores, we were an instrumental, just the 3 of us then. Because Noel, who had sang with us for a while, he left. He went back to the band he was with. And it was maybe 6-7 months before we met Dolores then. But we kind of kept going on our own. And I became the songwriter then during that time. And stuff like Linger and Dreams were instrumentals at that time then.
Wow.
And they were very early songs. And yeah, I think so. I had all this stuff and kind of I thought it was okay, but like that's what you know when you're that age, you think everything you do is brilliant. Like so, you know, it's like I'm so brilliant. And then it's when I met Dolores, and the first day I met her, she came up, she sang some songs for us, and we played a couple of these instrumentals. And then I gave her a cassette that I had, just me playing guitar, playing Linger on it. Gave her the cassette, and then she came back. That was a Sunday. I think it was a Thursday. She came back and said, I worked on that. I got some ideas. And she just started singing. You know, she like, start playing. We started playing it. She started singing it. And it was like, I kind of thought, yeah, that's actually all right. You know, it's kind of, you know, this could work. And that's how it just very organically grew like that. And that's how Dolores and I wrote for 30 years.
Wow.
Like, not cassettes, but, you know, it's more, you know, just to get that in there. Because someone online is going, they use cassettes for 30 years. You know? Wow. How? I mean, yeah. So it was, you know, it obviously went from cassettes to CDs to kind of, you know, the tech we have today where, you know, you email each other ideas. But we never sat in the same room. That never happened. And it just, all because of it all goes back to that. This is how we did it from day one.
Sure.
And it just kind of, we did it that way, and it worked for us. And it worked better because people would say, oh, you know, we'll meet on Wednesday and we're going to write songs. And I'm often wonder, what if you weren't in the mood on Wednesday? You're just going to sit in the room looking at each other. Because it's not something, well, not for me anyway, that I can kind of just go, I've got it scheduled in for Thursday night writing. You know, it's something that happens when you feel it.
Yep.
And I tried in the past few years to kind of do that, where I've met people to write with, and there's an awful lot of pressure when you're in a room like that. Especially, it's one thing with Dolores, like we knew each other for so long, but with people that I've only met that morning, maybe, it's not something I'm very comfortable with. So I kind of, this is my process, and people I work with, I kind of say to them, this is how I do it. And if there's something that clicks in there, then you can meet up and kind of, you know, expand on that idea.
Yeah.
But it worked for us. I mean, when things got busy and we were on tour, I'd come in like to the two boys at soundcheck with the idea, and
Mhm.
then the guy at front of house would record it for us, and then we give the cassette to Dolores, and that's how a lot of the albums came together then.
Wow.
You know, so like we found it easier, and there's no pressure, no time restriction on it then, and it's just kind of, you can come back to it whenever then.
Yeah.
That's
one of the coolest things about talking to people during this kind of stuff, because I like hearing, you know, different process for things, because people can make you feel like creativity has to have a certain discipline to it, but you know, I also don't work that way. Like I like the idea of like, oh, I'm feeling it right now, and this stuff just came to me, and I'm gonna sit down and write it. And anytime I have gone like, I really need to do it, it becomes, you start doubting yourself. It becomes tedious and work.
No,
and
I find that it's almost like you're pushing, like I don't really believe in writer's block, but a version of it on yourself, because you're stressing yourself out.
Yes.
Like I have this room here, my house is there, so it's kind of I'm over the garage basically. And if I'm feeling it, I'll come down, and you could be here an hour, you could be here 5 hours. It doesn't matter. And it's kind of nice to just to work at your own pace.
Yep.
I did last year during one of the pandemic lockdowns. I was lucky enough to do a soundtrack for a documentary, and it was the first time where I was actually had to be on a schedule, you know, because you've directors and producers, and they're going, you know, we need this and this done by next week. And it was the first time kind of really ever that I've had to write under someone else's, not that somebody was in here with me, but it was just that kind of constant kind of, and there were mornings where I woke up and going, oh God, this again, you know, because there's a pressure on you, you know. Now I love doing it, and it was a great experience, but it's to go through my whole career like that, it's not something that I could do anyway. You know, I think you would struggle to keep coming up with something fresh. The other side of it is, I mean, you know, when you're creating something, it has to be, you try and push yourself better than the last thing you did. Whether it is or isn't, you know, like other people will gladly tell you, you know, but for yourself, if you feel it anyway, you know, it's a nice feeling to walk away from it and go, yeah, I had a good day there. You know, and I think as you get older and you get like kind of, you're doing it longer, you realize, you know, I come out today, it's like, oh, it's not happening. Just go back in. You end up just going on Instagram or something.
It's scrolling through TikTok,
like YouTube or something like that. It's like 3 hours. Shit, you know, I'm here too long, kind of thing.
How quickly did you guys feel like when you had like a successful album, or like, you know, a song or two hit or something like that? How quickly did you guys feel pressure to do it again for the next one? Did you feel that?
Not until the third album, really, because the first and second album were kind of one really long writing session over a few years, because there was that freshness of us meeting, and we'd all these songs then that were kind of bottled up for years that we didn't know were there. And we just kind of wrote and wrote, we wrote like constantly. We were on tour, we wrote. And then so the first album came out and it didn't do well. And then it did well in America, like about a year after it came out here, and it was re-released here. And we had already written the second album then, even though the first album was only in the charts. So we were playing Zombie live, like easily a year and a half before we ever recorded it.
Wow.
You know? So we had all these songs. So the second one was really easy to do as well. And then that was even bigger than the first album. Then the pressure came where you've had a good run of maybe 3 years of writing, and like 2 strong albums, a bucket load of hits, and suddenly you kind of think, I need to do something fresh and new. And then that's when you start. It was the first time I had experienced that thing of kind of, okay, what's left to do now to try and change it. And that's when you do start to kind of struggle a bit more coming up with ideas and things like that. And, you know, we've often said, like, what we should have done after the second album is taken a year out, gone away, then come back and then start writing. But we were under severe pressure from everyone around us to, you know, do another album. We were making management and record company a lot of money.
Right.
And, you know, when we kind of ever mentioned taking time off, it was like, oh, you can't do that. You've already signed. And we had already signed to do a year-long tour.
Wow.
When we were still on the tour for the second album.
Mm-hmm.
So we went in, we did the third album. It's my least favorite album of what we did. And I've often said that, you know, it just because it's just not happy memories. It was like very stressful, and it was done very quickly, and under a lot of stress. And then when we went to go on tour, Dolores wasn't feeling it. She just said, the stress I'm under, I can't do this. And we pulled the whole tour.
Wow.
And then we ended up taking, you know, a year away.
Mm-hmm.
But it took it to get to that point where, you know, we were all just at our wits' end, but nobody had the guts to kind of go, I just don't want to do this.
Sure.
You know? And it was like literally the night before we were leaving, Dolores rang me at home and just said, I can't do it. I just feel, and if you look like at some of the videos around that time, like she's so thin. She's very, very skinny. Like she's just, you know, she's not eating. She's just not feeling it.
Right.
And like a lot of singers and bands under the most pressure, particularly being the girl amongst three guys, you know, kind of very well known and didn't have a moment's peace from it. And we kind of just, that was it. It was the first time we'd taken a break. Then we were doing it 6 years straight at that point.
Wow.
And so the 7th year, everybody went their separate ways. Thankfully, we were all on the same page. So we knew, we were like, yep, that's perfect. Thank God someone said it. Everyone went off to different sides of the world. But we all got along still, which was the great thing. It never got to the point where we went on tour and ended up hating each other. And that was the end of that.
Yeah.
You know, which has happened so many bands.
Right.
So that was it. And then, you know, a year went by or so, maybe slightly more than a year. And Dolores and I started talking again. And I said, I've got some songs. And at the time, she was living just outside Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And I was back here. And I had to courier cassettes to Toronto. This is the truth. This is like, we were still in cassette world back then.
Yeah.
I had to courier the tapes over for her to pick the songs that she thought she could work with.
Oh,
and that was it, you know. And then we got up and running again, but we learned a lot from that, kind of not to do that again, where you get to the point that you're kind of starting to hate the thing.
Yeah.
And so from that time on, we kind of did it where we toured, and then, you know, we do like maybe 2 years and then go, we're done for a while now, and then everyone went home again.
Right.
And we did it like that on and off then for a long time.
That you would think at some point these other like producers and executives and stuff like that would kind of learn from past mistakes, where like, you know, because ultimately the story you're telling me, I feel like other people have experienced where it's like the band's gonna leave regardless. Like if you keep pressuring them and they don't feel comfortable, that you're gonna lose your money at the end of the day anyway.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you felt this way during the pandemic too, but like a lot of musicians, especially that we've talked to, were like, we made this album and it was so nice to do it without anybody breathing down our neck and like creatively. And then plus like critically, like, you know, one of the bands that we had spoken to, like they were like, yeah, this is our most well received because it was from us.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's some disconnect there where they just still don't get it.
No, I think, look, they become blind with the money or something, you know. It's kind of, and I think it's harder now because I notice newer bands don't even have that kind of lifespan.
Right.
And I think a lot of the record companies and management think, okay, this band is 2 years or something maybe, and now I'm going to milk it as much as I can. And then, you know, it's like suddenly that's that done. We move on to the next thing.
Right.
I mean, we were lucky. We were in the last kind of row of bands where you sold records, like actual physical records, CDs, you know, and then that was kind of early to mid 90s before kind of, you know, Napster, and then that kind of thing started to creep in and things,
that was my
you
fault.
know, they changed the whole world. Well, look, you know, it was something that led to the world we're in now, where streaming has actually saved music in many ways, I think, because there was a kind of a few years where didn't know where it was because nobody was getting paid and everybody was downloading and and it was just kind of a mess. But then you had iTunes and Spotify and all these things, and they all have their pluses and minuses, but they have saved music again.
Yeah.
So
do you miss the kind of thing? Because I know I've noticed myself, like I listen to when somebody comes out with an album, I actually am excited because I'm like, oh, I can listen to this from beginning to end. But I do know I've gotten in the habit of like, I'll look through my playlist and I'm like, I have a lot of singles.
Yeah.
But that's also what most people are just putting out is like, here's a single, and then maybe down the road they take all those singles and they're like, and now here's an album. Do you miss like the actual like having a whole written thing?
It is a bit like I miss when like the last Cranberries album we did after Dolores passed away, but we had kind of recorded most of it before that. That was all written as one kind of thing, as one journey, and I kind of kept saying that during the promo at the time. It was like, this needs to be listened to from start to finish.
Yeah.
And look, I do exactly what you're talking about. I have playlists of my favorite songs from this album and that album, and there is that convenience there. But as somebody who writes an album, you do wish, that somebody listens to the whole thing, because there's always those gems in there that we miss. We all do. Because sometimes when your phone is on random, a song will come on from someone like whatever band it might be, and you go, gee, that's a great song. What's that from? And you find out it's like, it's the fifth song on the B side. If you have A and B side, just for the sake of this, that it was always there. It's there years, but you just never took the time to listen to it. Whereas years ago, especially with vinyl, the effort of getting up off the chair and, turning it over, you just let the thing play and then turned it over and let it play again. And you knew every word of every song from start to finish. So that is, it's gone in one way it's gone, but then you have everyone saying vinyl has made such a comeback that there must be a certain, percentage of people that still enjoy that.
Oh yeah. I mean, my friends and I do the same thing. Like we buy vinyl albums. I was just at a friend's concert, bought the vinyl album because I was like, I like listening to it like that.
Yeah, it's great. And the thing I missed for the years where vinyl wasn't really around was the artwork.
Oh,
remember, especially, the gatefold ones where it was like, like that was a whole kind of, there was that people who had a living from just making these over the top covers. That were amazing, and you would read everything. You knew who the producer was and who the writers were, and that is gone in many ways because you just hear the song, who sings it, and that's about as far as these days,
Right.
But I mean, look, I know from my own kids, the fact they're still listening to music is a good thing. I guess you gotta look at that and that they're willing to. It's nice to see. Like I've been looking at them, how they kind of began, like a lot of us, like kind of shitty pop music, kind of teeny bopper stuff, and then you see how they discover kind of a lot of older stuff that like you and I would listen to, and it's great that it does, even with all the things going on, it still goes back to a lot of that stuff.
It's cool to see like even, I mean, people use music on TikTok obviously all the time to kind of narrate their lives or whatever. And I saw there was some song, I swear I can't think of it right now, from the 70s pop up. And I was like, and it was even obscure in the realm of a 70s song.
Yeah.
But I was just like, it's so weird that it's like now being used like every day. And it kind of, on one hand, it makes me happy, and the other hand, it makes me angry because I'm like, if I just randomly played this in my car, somebody younger would be like, "What the fuck?" But because it's on TikTok, I'm like, God damn. But I do the same thing you just said though too. I was listening to, and I'm like a big fan of the Counting Crows too. Like I grew up with like your music and their music and like whatever. But I thought I'd heard every song. And I was driving on a long road gig, and a song had popped up, and I did the same thing. I was like, "What out? Like." What is this from? And I realized I must have skipped it for years or just never noticed it.
It's crazy.
It is. But that's a good way of putting it. Like you do find stuff like that when you listen to it from back to front.
Yeah.
We have some questions. Yeah. Sorry. Go for it.
Oh, no worries. Sorry about that. I'm going to pull it up because we do have a couple of questions. Behind the bit says, did Noel ever get to work with Jim and William Reed from Jesus and Mary Chain?
No. We've seen them play live, and they were involved with Jesus. They were involved with Rough Trade for a long time, and it turned out that. So after I mentioned Rough Trade earlier, and we didn't sign with them, but we did get to meet the guy, Jeff Travis, who created Rough Trade and is still there to this day. And Jeff actually became our manager because there was still that connection of that love we had for the kind of indie music, like Jesus and Mary Chain and the Smiths and all that. Like we grew up listening to all of that. And we asked Jeff, we got along with him really well. And we just, as bold as brass, just said, we need a manager. Do you want to be, as things were starting to happen. So Jeff was our manager for, I guess, the first 5 years of when we started to take off. So that's just kind of close. There is a weird connection there with them, but actually to meet them, no, never. It'd be interesting to meet another set of brothers, to see how they get along. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
How was it always being with your brother? Because I have a brother too. We work together. It's not super easy, but it's
yeah, it's good. Like, I mean, we never got along as teenagers, right? Ever. Mm-hmm. And even when the band began, we used to kind of fight a lot. But we did get along, apart from when writing would happen, where I'd come on and I'd go, I got this idea and this is the way it is. And he'd go, well, what is it? And I'd go, it's this. And then we'd start a big fight and everybody would lead the stage, and the two of us, we would really go at it. He'd be like, it's an A. And I goes, it's not fucking A, it's this, and it'd be, and this would go on. And then about 15 minutes later, like, you forget about it. That's the good thing about when it's family, that it's just kind of, and like, we're very close still, we're lucky we got along. And I mean, like anything, the only problem is when you're on your downtime and you're off. And I don't, like, I used to see Ferg and Doris that much, but like Mike's always like, at my parents' house there. But we have the same friends, we're still seeing each other. Yeah.
I have a question from Instagram, and it's when you guys were touring, was there anybody that you were opening for or got to meet that you were starstruck by?
I guess REM would have been, we were all massive REM fans growing up. And then when we went to do Linger, the video, we were flown. It was our first time in the States. We were flown over. And the girl who directed the video had worked on the Losing My Religion video. So we're there, like, we filmed it overnight downtown LA. And suddenly we look around and Michael Stipe's like walking down the hall. And this was like a year after Losing My Religion or something. Oh my God. And we were like truly starstruck, just kind of, I always remember, because there's photos of us and we're all just like, kind of just looking at him like he'd 25 heads. So, but then years later on the Monster tour, we got to be the opening act for them in Europe. And we did, I think, about 3 weeks with them. And we got to meet the whole band and kind of hang out with them a lot. And it was great. And, it was just amazing that something that especially said the likes of myself, Mike, and Ferg would have been in my bedroom or in Ferg's, kind of listening to those albums. And then you're sitting in catering, just chatting away, and he'd be like, kind of, is this actually happening?
Right.
I mean, and I know we were big and we had all that kind of stuff. You're still in complete awe of these people. So of tour wise, they would be the ones that stood out.
Wow. That's crazy. And then you just ran into him in the hallway. What are the odds?
Yeah. He came down and he was like, and he was really nice. Hey, and kind of, and we now at the time, right, we'd never like really been anywhere. So our Irish accents were uber thick at this point. Now he probably left there thinking, I don't know what's going on up there, like what those guys are talking about.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Did you plan the Cranberries video documentary?
Yes. We are working on that. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The short version of this is about a year and a half before Doris passed away. We started filming interviews with us for a documentary that was to be for how the band started up to the second album.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we filmed bits of that, and then Dolores passed away, and it was all kind of put on the shelf. And then a few years ago, we decided, okay, there's no point just doing it for that section. We'll do the whole career, the full 30 years.
Nice.
So then COVID came along, and everything kind of went back into pause again. So we've started that conversation in the past few months again with different directors and production companies.
Cool.
So it will happen, but we're kind of back to early days on it again now, trying to get organized. But hopefully in the next couple of years, because these things always take way longer than you think.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask too myself, was there one instance of performing live that stands out more than the others? You were in so many, like you were in Woodstock, like the second run of it, so many tremendous concerts during that time. Was there one
I
that
suppose
really
like Woodstock does stick out in that, I mean, it was the biggest audience we'd ever played to.
Wow.
And I remember like it was real rock and roll. We had to get a helicopter in for backstage. I mean, so we were like, that was another first. So that one does stand out as a kind of like, I mean, I remember being on a stage and you could not see where the crowd ended. It just went on and on and on, things like that. And I suppose like I touched on it earlier, the first night playing in Denver, the first American gig where we went out and the place went crazy and knew all the lyrics. And I mean, you remember things like that. They're not the biggest gigs in the world, but they're a moment where things change, So, there's lots of gigs, thankfully, it was the one thing that you could always rely on, is that playing live was so much fun.
Yeah. By the way, if you watch this back and it looks like I'm getting choked up about you playing at Woodstock, I had to sneeze and I didn't know what to do.
All right.
So I'm just like trying to like stop it, but I realized in the camera it looks like I'm like, no, the Woodstock. Yeah. I was like,
you're emotional about helicopters, basically, is what's on me here. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to ruin his story if I sneeze right now. So I'm like trying to block it out. So sorry. I was like,
okay.
What am I doing? Like, please don't sneeze. The joys of doing these on Zoom. That's awesome though, man. The helicopter thing must be. Do you have like intense travel stories where like, because like it's got to be weird to be that young and then all of a sudden be thrust on a plane if you've never been anywhere before, you know what I mean? Like, were you guys all cool like with that kind of travel stuff, or were you freaked out by like, being on the road constantly?
It was gradual, so that you did become used to it.
Okay.
Like it went from vans, like really shitty vans, and sleeping, kind of in every angle your body can do it, and then it went from that to bigger vans to really shitty buses, but they were a bus all the same.
Right.
We did our first tour, the one we did before we went to America. We were the opening act for a band. We got to tour in Europe for a few weeks, and we were convinced we were going to be dropped anyway at this point, because things had kind of not really worked out. And so we got the best bus we could afford, which was the terrible bus, and we couldn't afford hotels.
Right.
So I remember we had a few days off in Berlin in the summer, and it was so hot. I mean, stifling now. But we had to live on the bus for a few days, and you're not allowed to have the engine run in the city. So no AC on this bus.
Oh my
just
God.
Soaking wet. No money to go anywhere. I mean, it was just kind of, so little things like that, you kind of remember these things where, buses breaking down, and then, and thankfully, look, as things get better, you can fly places and you get a better bus and the hotels become nicer and things like that. And, but you do the whole, it's a gradual ladder of just kind of everyone's sharing a room to, people letting us sleep on their floors and things like that, and all that kind of stuff. And I think by the time you do get to the intense traveling, you're kind of used to it. You realize it's part of the whole thing.
Part of the whole thing.
Yeah. And that never goes, I think. I mean, even now, if someone said you had to pack and go for whatever, you just
do it.
Yeah, it's part of it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, dude, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I've got the last 3 questions that we ask every guest.
Okay.
So the first one is, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself that would help you today?
I don't know. Spend more time breakdancing. Invest in that more. That's where it's at, Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I feel like I might know the question in this next one then, the answer to it. What had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
I'm not going to say breakdancing.
I was going to say breakdancing. I'm like
the obvious one, I guess what had to end. I suppose being like, and this is slightly serious, but being so reliant on your parents. When you're living at home, like as we were, and kind of your parents did everything. Wash your clothes, clean up, all that kind of stuff, and you just kind of came and went. And suddenly it was like one day you're going off to the UK for 3 weeks, and I'd never gone away for a weekend of my own. So so that kind of innocence of just that's gone like overnight, and little do you know at the time, this is your life from here on in. And I'm glad of it. And I've encouraged my own kids from the earliest of ages to just get out, travel. That's better than anything, know. And then we've done that with all of them, and they do it all the time. And we just kind of, I can only speak from my own experience, and it's, I'd like to think it's done me no harm. If anything, it's kind of grown, your kind of view of the world from doing that. So I think losing that kind of side of it of being, because I think after that first time of leaving home and traveling, we never really, you'd come home, but you weren't really living there anymore. You'd come home and you'd be there for a week just to kind of wash your clothes and leave again. And that was until eventually, when we did have finally time at home is when I first moved out. Kind of went, and it's nothing against my parents or anything. It was just, like anybody, if you go to college and you move away, when you come back suddenly, and they're going, what time is this to be coming in? And you're thinking, well, you don't know what I've been doing for the last 12 months,
Right.
So, yeah.
That's great. I actually have one more question from a fan. Sorry, John, just before we wrap up that last question. Elenario was actually with us the whole time. Is there any new songs on the To the Faithful Departed 25th anniversary?
There are not new songs, but there are different versions. Sorry, my screensaver came on here, guys. There are different versions of songs because we did demos that we never used with other producers, and we kind of we had forgotten about them. Nice. So we looked around to see where there are songs we never used of that kind of that time, and it turns out there wasn't. Because it's the album I was saying earlier, that's the third album, which is the one, like there was I think, we kind of just about got it done.
Right.
So there's nothing extra on there. I think it's probably the only album that happened on, because all the rest of them were, there was a lot of spare stuff around and B-sides and, kind of different versions.
Awesome.
Very cool. Appreciate that. And I'm sure all of our fans appreciate it too, because I know they've been enjoying it. It came out. One of our listeners actually said this is the first time they've been on a stream in 3 years because they saw you were going to be on it. They came out.
Cool. Hopefully I didn't disappoint, with my breakdancing stories, so I'm going to bring it back.
A whole rush of new fans now. Yeah, breakdancing.
My next album is going to be rap, breakdancing, inspired. Yeah.
Strictly break beats.
Yeah. And I superimpose my head onto some guy dancing, and yeah.
Oh, we're gonna do that now. You know that, right?
I hope. Yeah, I want to see it. Yeah, please.
So our last question is: if this was a real dystopia, alien zombies, volcanoes exploding, comet headed toward the Earth, what would be your epic death? How would you want to go out?
Wow. I guess like kind of Butch and Sundance style, just out the door, you know, kind of all guns blazing, and then be whatever apocalyptic horror is there will be waiting for me.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Love it, man. I just watched that the other day. It was on AMC.
It's so good. Yeah.
Nobody needed to know that, but I said it. Here's a random plug for AMC in case anybody gave a shit. I don't know. Yeah. Oh man, dude, it was such a great time talking to you, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, guys. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
Truly, man. Fun. We had a great time. Thanks so much, man.
Good.
Take care, man.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dystopia tonight.